People love saying things like, he's just naturally intelligent. It's one of the most comforting lies we tell ourselves, because if intelligence is something you're born with, then nobody has to feel responsible for improving it. You're either lucky or you're not. That sounds nice. Your brain completely disagrees. Your brain changes every single day, every book you read, every problem you solve, every difficult conversation, every time you force yourself to understand something instead of giving up. Your brain adapts. The real question isn't whether your brain is changing. It's what you're training it to become. Think about football. If you practice penalties every day, you'll probably become better at penalties. If you practice free kicks every day, you'll probably become better at free kicks. Now imagine someone who spends 4 hours a day switching between TikTok, Instagram, YouTube Shorts, and checking messages every 3 minutes. Congratulations. That person is becoming extremely skilled at changing their attention every 15 seconds. Your brain is always practicing something. Most people just never choose what. That's why intelligence isn't really about having a bigger brain. It's about building a better one. The smartest people usually aren't the ones with magical genetics. They're the ones whose daily habits quietly train the way they think. And the first habit is surprisingly uncomfortable. Learn something difficult every day. Notice, I didn't say something interesting. Interesting is easy. Your brain loves easy. Difficulty is where change happens. Imagine walking into a gym. You pick up the smallest dumbbell in the building, you curl it 20 times, then you look in the mirror expecting bigger arms. That would be ridiculous. Yet people expect their brain to grow without ever asking it to do anything difficult. Watching documentaries isn't difficult. Listening to podcasts while folding laundry isn't difficult. Reading the same type of books you've always enjoyed isn't difficult. Useful. Sometimes. Training. Not necessarily. Real learning starts when your brain struggles. When you have to stop and reread a paragraph. When you can't immediately solve the problem. When your brain says, "This is hard." That's usually the exact moment it's improving. Learn a language, study chess, write code, practice mental math. Read a book that makes you pause every other page. It doesn't even matter what the skill is. Difficulty is the stimulus. Your brain responds to challenge the same way muscles respond to weight. No resistance, no growth. But here's the funny part. Most people accidentally waste half that effort because they immediately move on to the next thing, which brings us to habit number 2. Teach what you learn. The fastest way to discover you don't understand something is trying to explain it. Everyone feels smart inside their own head. Then someone asks a simple question. So how does that actually work? Suddenly you're speaking a language that sounds suspiciously similar to caveman noises. You realize you memorized the conclusion. You never understood the process. Teaching forces your brain to organize information. Think of it like cleaning your garage. Everything was technically inside the building before. Now you actually know where everything is. Here's a simple challenge. After learning something new, explain it without using technical words. Pretend you're talking to a 12-year-old. If you can't explain inflation without saying inflation, or explain gravity without saying gravity, you probably have more studying to do. Great teachers aren't intelligent because they explain things well. They explain things well because they've been forced to understand them deeply. Every explanation exposes weak spots. Every explanation strengthens understanding. And here's something interesting. Your brain remembers information far better when it has to retrieve it instead of simply seeing it again. Reading your notes 5 times feels productive. Explaining those notes from memory is productive. Those are 2 very different things. Now imagine combining that habit with the next one. This is where intelligent people quietly become even more intelligent. Read outside your expertise. Most people accidentally build intellectual bubbles. The history fan only reads history. The entrepreneur only reads business. The programmer only watches coding videos. The psychology nerd convinces themselves every human problem can be explained with dopamine. We all do it, because familiarity feels efficient. The problem is that intelligence often comes from connecting ideas that don't normally belong together. Think about cooking. Salt by itself isn't impressive. Chocolate by itself isn't impressive. Combine them correctly and suddenly dessert becomes much more interesting. Ideas work the same way. A concept from biology might solve a business problem. A lesson from history might improve your relationships. An economics principle might completely change how you think about productivity. Your brain isn't a filing cabinet. It's a pattern-making machine. The more different ingredients you feed it, the more unexpected combinations it can create. That's why some of the most innovative people in history weren't obsessed with one subject. They were curious about everything. Leonardo da Vinci studied anatomy, engineering, art, mathematics, architecture, and nature. He wasn't collecting hobbies. He was collecting patterns. You don't need to become the next Leonardo. But maybe don't let the algorithm decide every single thing your brain consumes. Read a page about astronomy. Watch a documentary about ancient Rome. Learn how airplanes stay in the air. Read about negotiation. Study music theory even if you've never touched a piano. Your brain becomes more intelligent when it has more building blocks to connect. And that's exactly where the fourth habit becomes uncomfortable. Because learning new ideas is easy. Changing your mind is much harder. Habit number 4. Challenge your own beliefs. This is probably the least comfortable habit on this list, not because it's difficult, because your ego hates it. Your brain loves being right. Once you form an opinion, your mind quietly starts acting like a lawyer instead of a scientist. It searches for evidence that supports your belief. Anything that disagrees gets dismissed, ignored, or explained away. You can see it everywhere. Sports fans defend terrible refereeing decisions if it benefits their team. Investors suddenly become economists after buying one stock. People choose a diet, then spend the next 6 months explaining why every other diet is destroying civilization. The smarter you are, the better you become at defending bad ideas. That's the dangerous part. Intelligence isn't protection against bias. Sometimes it makes the bias more convincing. Really intelligent people do something different. They actively search for information that could prove them wrong. Not because they enjoy losing arguments, because they value being correct more than feeling correct. Imagine trying to improve your golf swing. Would you rather have someone who tells you every shot looks perfect, or a coach who immediately points out what you're doing wrong? Your beliefs work exactly the same way. If nobody challenges them, they stop improving. Here's an easy habit. Whenever you feel completely certain about something, ask yourself one question. What evidence would change my mind? If the answer is nothing, you're no longer thinking, you're protecting an identity. That simple question forces your brain back into learning mode. And learning mode is where intelligence grows. Now for the 5th habit. Reflect before consuming more. This might be the most overlooked habit in the entire video. We live in a world obsessed with collecting information. Another podcast, another book, another newsletter, another YouTube video called 5 Habits That Will Make You More Intelligent. The strange part is that consuming information feels like progress. Thinking feels slow. So, we keep consuming. Imagine eating 6 meals in a row without giving your body time to digest. Eventually, the problem isn't a lack of food, it's a lack of processing. Your brain works the same way. Knowledge becomes useful during reflection, not during consumption. After reading a chapter, stop. Ask yourself what the main idea was. Ask yourself whether you actually agree with it. Ask yourself where you could apply it this week. Try explaining it from memory without looking back. Those 5 minutes will usually teach you more than another 30 minutes of passive content. Because intelligence isn't measured by how much information enters your brain. It's measured by what your brain does with that information afterward. Now look back at all 5 habits. Learn difficult things. Teach what you learn. Read outside your expertise. Challenge your beliefs. Reflect before consuming more. Notice that none of them require expensive courses. None require perfect genetics. None require waking up at 4 in the morning while sitting in an ice bath and journaling under a full moon. They all have one thing in common. They force your brain to think. Real thinking. The kind that's slightly uncomfortable. The kind that makes you slow down. The kind that changes how your brain connects ideas instead of simply storing them. That's what intelligence really is. Not knowing the most facts, not using the biggest words, not winning every argument. It's the ability to understand better today than you did yesterday. Your brain is already adapting every single day. The only question is whether you're training it intentionally or letting the algorithm decide what kind of thinker you become. Choose your habits carefully because your habits eventually become the way your brain thinks.